Now in this situation, if you wanted more detail than that, and the easy way is you start with your that there, do a Shift S, cursor to selected, go out and get in a wireframe because it's just easier to see, and we just add a circle. And the circle, make the fill type an n-gon, align it to the view, and then just give it the number you want. Let's double it, let's say 64. So it's nice and smooth. Now just scale. Oh, turn that off, there's a thought. Scale. Get it roughly where you want. Obviously there's going to be eyeball in here because it's not exactly the same geometry. And I just apply the scale as a matter of course. Now you can go straight into edit mode here, or if you wanted to, you could add a solidify. And then just drag that out to where you wanted it and apply it. I just find that one very handy to use. So face mode, and now it's just a case of using insets and extrudes with the control, and I keep 1 to flip the mode. So I can do E, get my cursor there, press E, hold control, click, check that to closest from active. Active is fine in this case because I'm always using that. Then again, from front view, insert, bring it down. In fact, we'll scale that in, it's probably the inner one we want. No, it'd be the outer one, I think. The inner one is the back one. Again, side view, zoom in, EX, click, then even though I'm at an angle, I'm guaranteed to hit what I want. Again, front view again, insert, down, go around. Right, this one's a little more awkward, but again, if I do EX, bump, there we go, that's right. Again, 3, insert, sorry, inset I should say, not insert. 1, I'm going to EX, bump back to where we were, then EX, bump up to here, and just scale in. And 3 again, we can scale that. And I can actually go to solid view here, and if I scale, it gives me a rough alignment like that. And then I can EX, bump. I can do an ES there and instead of an insert, and just scale that in like that. Now in this case I'm going to want wireframe mode because I want to follow the pattern of this. Cursor over there, E, hold control, click. Cursor over there, E, hold control, click. Actually what I should have done first is scale those in a little bit. And control minus, scale that in. And what I want to do is change that to median. So I'll undo those two. Now I'll scale. That's better. Control minus scale. E, control click, scale. Zoom in a bit. E, control click, scale. And I'm literally pressing E, moving the mouse button, holding control, clicking once to position it, then scaling. Then I'm just going to E, I'm going to just drag that out a little bit, scale that a lot. Now, here you can press insert, but sometimes it might do that, go in and go the other way. So whether you want to press insert or do E and S there is entirely up to you. Now if I go into local mode. You can see that's looking much better. Back out of local mode. Let's do the back the same way. So again, wireframe because it's easier to work with. So I say you can do an E and an S instead of an inset faces there. So 3, yeah, that's about right. Again, zoom in, do E, X to force it. I for inset, down, EX, up, inset, dunk. Now again I go into solid view here, scale, just make sure I'm getting it roughly right, back into wireframe, and do the same as we did here. So E, hold control, click, scale, then repeat, E, control, click, scale, E, control, click, scale, E, control, click, scale, E, hold control, click, not scaling, inset, and Z8, scale that a bit more, Z6, 1, repeat the process, E. So I've probably unfair advantage here as a left-handed person. Now this is a bit, I just pointed at the screen, that's really useful, isn't it? This is a bit too small, so I'm going to just Control plus, Control plus, Control plus. Then I'm going to scale Shift X, line it up, and that's it. Now just Control minus back to there. Again, E, bump. Just repeating the process. There we go. And then all we need to do there is just smooth it up. So smooth, auto smooth to 30. And there's your really nice, highly detailed one. And if you want to set the origin to somewhere specific, and this is as good a point as any. You could set it there if you want, or you could set it here. He says, zoom in, there we go. And Shift S, origin to selection. So that's nice. And then again, the same with this, if we come out of, I'm just going to move this to its own layer. I'll stick it down there. Again, the same thing applies where you can add array to it. So I can add an array, just up the count, and then just use Shift to manually position it. So like that. Now in this case, you can either apply the array and copy it, or again you could reposition your cursor there and then separate them and set your origins. Because as it stands at the moment, obviously, if I applied this and I rotate on the X, then that's not really what you're looking for. So again, you'd go in and just separate by loose parts, and just select everything and origin to geometry for Mole. In this case, it's anywhere in the center of the wheel is fine. It could be anywhere along this because of the nature of the model. But obviously on a car it'd be a different story, because you'd have to factor in the rotation this way of the wheel. And then with that you can either just put the cursor back to the origin, select everything, put it on cursor. I can just Shift D and I can RY 180. Oh, let's Control A, set the rotation and scale. Let's try again. RY 180. That's not worked. 180, where'd you get the 200 from? Oh, I'm doing massively well here, aren't I? Duh. Oh. Actually, this is a case in point of that. Now I can select everything. I can scale Z0. Now they're all lined up. And then I just have to GZ, move them up to where I want. And jobs are gone, turn that back off. So that's another way that's really handy to use. When things don't go according to plan, like they just didn't. So there's all your wheels. And again, if you'd UV map that, then it naturally all these would have the same UV map. Another advantage of using your mirror and your array where you can. Right, so that's that lot done. The next one is going to be this bit here, which on the face of it looks pretty straightforward, apart from the fact that there's some clearly overlapping polys there. And so we will get into that next. So with this particular piece of geometry, you've got a few things to consider if you get something like this. I mean, the first obvious thing is we've got some overlying geometry here, and if you look at it, you can see it quite clearly. I can select that, so that's what you would presume to be the right piece of geometry. Then you've got that middle one, which is the same as having the actually, if I come back out of there and I unhide everything, I'll actually use local view to highlight the issue. You can see that's like the bottom part of that unit there. So there's that, and then you've got this odd looking, get that out of the way, try it, so difficult to select that odd looking one there, which is sort of partly a combination of the other two. And that's what I'd call redundant mesh. And another thing that's interesting here is if I select this face, and if you notice I can't, if I deselect it, I can't necessarily select it clearly, but except if I click on that. I hide that, and you can see if I move that out of the way, let's go into local view, you can see you've got a polygon there which shouldn't be there. That shouldn't exist, so you could delete that polygon. That's again something to watch for. That would really mess up your geometry when you were trying to do something. So let's just delete that polygon. And then you've got to decide, do you have everything linked up, and sort of there it is linked up, or do you just have a flat surface and have everything sat on top of it? A flat surface with everything sat on top is the best way. And then you also want to decide, do you want tidy geometry? You know, so like if I take this, in order to get something like, and once again as soon as I go into point mode, you can see we've got loose geometry, so deselect everything. by trait, it's geometry. Let's get rid of those vertices, and I'm going to join those up so that we've got nice geometry. And here again, you're sort of looking, thinking that looks fine, but you've got to question whether that is two edges or one edge. In this particular case, that's two edges. That's great. What about the front? Because just because one side's right doesn't necessarily follow that the other is. So, and that straight away tells you that has got that completely wrong. So if I hide everything else, you can see that is not remotely right. So let's just delete that face. Now have a look. Right, so we can then select them two and join it. Oh, I had that one selected, didn't want to. And again, going to wireframe, you've got an edge, that doesn't add up. So what if we delete that edge? Right. So yeah, that doesn't add up, so do F for face there, F for face there. Then I'm actually just going to select those two and press F again, so it's one face. But now we've got the right things, and if I do that, and F, now we have what we expect. You see there was 3 or 4 situations there which would have messed things up considerably when you came to do something like add a bevel or what have you, or you tried to do added geometry, and it would get itself very confused. So the simple way of doing all of this now would be to delete that face and select that edge, and I'm just going to Y, so V rather, to rip it. L, let's just go back. Right, delete that face. V, there we go. And that's interesting, it's still joined. You would expect it not to be. Why is it still joined? We have faces under here. Now they're redundant, so let's get rid of them. And then we've got a couple of redundant points as a result, so Control X to get rid of them. Okay, now let's try doing V on that face. That's getting rid of those has solved the problem. If I can hide that now. So let's tackle this back end. So we've got that, but we can go straight across if we don't want anything joined. So I'm going to accept that, I'm going to delete that, Alt hide. And then all I need to do then is select that face and that edge and that rather, that edge and that. And that's the simple answer for that done. And there's that. So that bit's easy. And again, you can see we've got issues with this other geometry, so it would be the same sort of thing. So let's come out into object mode and let's select these. And I'm just going to jump into local mode first so I can join these cleanly, then jump out of local mode. And don't underestimate using local mode for isolation while you're working on the fly. So again, these sort of thing, we can go in, these faces are not required, and then we just need to build these up. So in order to build these up, I'm going to flip those normals, Then we want to think about how we want to join these up. Now, again, you've got significant addition of geometry there, so you've got to think about where you want to place your first bits of geometry so that you're not getting very odd behavior. So say for example here, I would be inclined to take this one first. Oh, and actually we've got a couple of faces here we don't need, so let's delete that face and delete that face. And again, that's a face we don't need, so we can delete that face. So take these, select that edge, that edge, that edge, that edge, that edge. Oh, not that one, that one. Then select that one and press F for face. So we put that into start and that one, so they're now nicely joined up. So do the same here. That's that one now nicely joined up. Now we can join the rest. So click, control, get a better angle, click, control click, shift click, face, click, control click, shift click, face. And there, that's fine. Now when you apply to that a bevel to that, something odd may happen, but if that's the case, then you've got to go back and think about maybe adding geometry. So again here, those two, F, click, control click, shift click, face. So they're all tidy. So now we can just come out of object mode into object mode. Let's just throw a bevel on it and see what it does. And you can see where your bevels are taking place. Put it on an angle. And actually that's not so bad. You could live with that. Yeah, you could, otherwise you're getting distortion there. So again, as I said before, then you've got to factor in making some additional geometry to cut that. So if we do a control R there, GY, snap it to there, I'll just control B. I'm going to control R here and drag it over here a bit and control B. I'm not placing them dead to start with. Do there, control R, drag it over there and control B. And the same here, control R, drag it over here and control B. And now I can line things up. So I'll select that, GY control click, select that, GY control click, same thing. This one will be X, GX control click, GX control click. Alright, turn that bevel back on, go back into solid mode, into object mode, and that's, we've still got the issue there on this two piece of geometry because of that. So let's address that. So we do a control R, pull that along, control B, widen that out, GY control, GY control, and I'll tell you what I've not done is I've not actually joined them up. That's what I need to do. So go into point mode, select 2 and J. Oi. And just there's 2 there I need to do as well. So let's wing that around. Control R, Control B, Control R, Control B. It's just a quick way of doing that. GY, 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 GY 2 and J, 2J, 2J, 2J. Now turn it back on, go back into object mode, and there we are. Then that's all of your shading issues dealt with. So again, that's something you want to be looking out for when you're rebuilding geometry. I mean, you could have also built this straight from one point. It's as broad as it's long as to which would be quicker. And in fact, I can show you that if I go in here and we take this point, this face, and again you're just using your outline geometry for your separate by selection. You're using your outline geometry just for a guide. So I can go in, select it, EY, and again I'm not bothered about the orientation just yet. I can solve that at any point just by selecting everything, doing Control N. Right, I can select with both of these because again they're both going to go the same way, so EX, so that's that. I can select that one, EY. You get the idea now. I've missed that one out, so again that's no problem. Do a Control R, GX, do another Control R, GX. Right, now these two I can just bridge edge loops. Shift click W, bridge edge loops. This one and this one. EX, sorry, Y. EY. Take those two and F3, bridge edge loops. So you can either use your specials there, or because you've used your bridge edge loops previously, you can access it from the history. Either one works fine. Again, EY. Oh, that didn't work well. Now, there we go, just snap to there. EY, EY. So that's all that. I go into that, select that. Select by normal, because again these are redundant, and delete those faces. And as you can see, the bevel on that's just fine. Let's take clamp over lamp off, and let's just ramp that up, and you can see that it goes quite a ways before it gets ugly. If I turn on the wireframe, you can see it works well. It works even better in 2.8 because of the refined bevel that it's got. The bevel in 2.8 has definitely seen some benefits over the 2.7.9, but that'll work. That's a bit excessive anyway, so I'll just turn the wireframe back off. So that's a way of doing that. Okay, I'll delete that because we've done the donkey work. Right, again the same with these. Do you want them as one piece or not? So let's join them together. Go in, delete that face, local, and then just simply redoing this. So it's like that. Now if you don't like that and you want it a bit tidier, what you can do is just do a Control R there, Control R there, Shift select that, Control B to roughly where you want it, and then just F, F, Actually, yeah, you'd need it on there as well. So let's just select those two, 3, and I'm just going to KZ E, return. And unfortunately, that was my mistake. What my mistake there was, I should have hidden everything else before cutting it. Now Alt hide. And that makes more sense. So select that, face, select them two, face, F, 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 F. So, and again, if we put a bevel on that, 3mm, a couple of them. And there we are, and that's not too bad in terms of shading. And once again, if you want to minimize that, you can just pull these in like that. There we go. Just added some sharp edges there using the, again using the hard ups, but it's just the same as going in and marking sharp. So that just tidies up the shading some, so we come out. So that's that done. It's the same there. I can go in, make sure nothing's selected, sharp edges, and then Control E, mark sharp as we did before, and that just makes it tidier. It gets rid of that ballooning, for want of a better phrase. Now these, you could join these up actually with that one if you wanted to. Do Control J, again go in, Shift hide everything else, go into local mode. In fact, let's undo that and turn that to face before we Shift hide. There we go. Alright, so we can get rid of that face. And let's hide that. And we can actually get rid of that face. Do the same, select those two edges, bridge edge loops. Let us select sharp edges and mark sharp. There we are, that's added them to that one now. And again, you do the same for the rest of it basically. And you then would apply exactly the same procedure here. If I sort of skim around this, you'll see that's actually come up. This is interesting. I was saying this is interesting because on the other one those two are joined to be one object, but that spurious polygon there has come in as a separate object on the other side of the model, so that's unusual. So it makes me wonder, what about the middle, this bit here? We got the same situation? No, there's no. Oh, let's go into wireframe. No. Now there's just the one, so let's have a look in edit mode. Let's select that face, and yeah, that suffers from exactly the same problem. So let's delete that face. And then reapply that face. And that's gone wrong, so that again tells you that edge is wrong. So let's delete that face. Select those two faces. Select that edge, that edge, that edge. Make a face. And if we throw a bevel on there, and make that angle, then yeah, then that now behaves as expected. So again, that was the same issue. Now with this one, let's say you wanted to make everything part and parcel of the same item, so everything was joined together. That's going to add an awful lot of geometry, because all of these things are going to have to connect. And the way I personally would tackle that is I would do a knife project on them. So I would take all of these upper faces and then cut through. So let's say let's get rid of that face. I'll hide that. Go in local mode. I'm going to unhide that. Actually, I'm going to delete that face because we know this one matches the bottom of that other piece. So we select them too, because we haven't got an edge, and do F, and that gives us that. So that's the bottom of that taken care of. Now we can actually delete that middle one, because that won't be seen. And so we can hide that, delete those two faces because they won't be seen. Tidy up those 2 points because they won't be needed. Let's get rid of the loose geometry to start with. Just because I'm a bit uptight about things like this, I do like to make that a quad. So now we have to think about added geometry. So the first thing is, if I do a Control R here and accept that, I can then tie up these 2 points and those 2 points. And that at least then gives me quads all the way around. Apart from that, obviously, because that's not a quad. But actually, I Control click and do an F for a face there. I should have pressed Control X, not delete. So there we go. So first things first, we're going to need a couple of cuts here. So do a Control R there, drag that on. GY, just using the axes points here, do a Control R here, GY, and that's that bit. Oh, deselect everything before we do Control R and GY. Oh, now we've messed things up. Let's select everything, do WR. Try again, Control R. Interesting. Something has gone terribly awry there, so I'm just going to back up a few bit. Let's try again. Face. Now Control R. GY. Now let's try that again. Deselect everything. Control R. That is really odd. What is going on there? Edges. Hide that edge. Aha! We've got a spurious edge. Hide that edge. We've got multiple edges. So let's delete that edge. And unhide everything. That's better. Now let's try again. Ah, I know what the issue is. I know what the issue is. The issue is it under here. Yeah, so I'm going to take a few steps back, get rid of that completely. Right. The issue is under here. If I unhide everything, what I didn't do was make these a quad, so select that, J. Now let's see if I've got everything by select by trait, select faces by side, greater than 4. Okay, we have an issue here. Because I would have said that was a 4 point. I would have said they were 4 points. So let's select everything. Let's WR. Knock it up 1. 3 vertices removed. Okay, now let's select by trait. Greater than 4. Yeah, that makes sense, because that's got a point there. That's alright, that's fine. So let's deselect everything and do a Control R. GY, line it up to there. I'm going to select that and J. Now if I select by trait, I wouldn't expect to find any, apart from the end caps. And we still have, yeah, because of that one. That's correct. So again, same thing, Control R. GY and Shift J. Okay, now have we got everything? WR, select all by trait, faces, greater than 4. That's more like it. Right, so that's them done, and we could probably just add a bit of geometry that way to be on the safe side. And then looking at this, at the very least, we want 3 cuts there. Like that. I can select edges, make that a face, make that a face. Do an Alt. We need 3 cuts on there. So select that. What we're going to do is actually select these interior points here, and then go EX to that point. Then we can just select the 2 outlying faces. Now we just join them up, and again the same here, just gonna EX and snap to there and join those 2 faces up, join those 2 faces up, and then I can just select that one, control click, so shift select that, control click, control click the right one, then bridge edge loops. And let us put a cut in. Oh, that's not worked nicely. Now, so we can't do that. So let's just select those 2 again. And that's because we need an extra point here. So what we can do is we can just WS there. So do that. Select those 2. EX, again, face, face, there we go. So that's your sort of starting geometry for it all. But as you can see, you're going to get a mass of geometry here. Now with everything else through in, I just GG and try and position. That one's actually in a nice place. Try position these edges to a more suitable location and just pull that down to roughly the middle, like that. I'm just thinking about where these are intersecting. So I'm going to do a one here, intersect that there. You can see it's going to be a lot more work doing this. There's just no way around it, unfortunately. if you want to have it all nicely lined up, you need the geometry, and that's the end of that. And again, we can do a Control R. That won't work because we end up almost stuck. What we can do, let's try making that a J and select them. So then let's try a Control R now here, and that's fine because we don't mind that being an N-gon at that. We can sort that out. We can do a Control R here, pull that out there, and I think we can live with that. Then all we need to do is just select them up. There we go. We just, again, the shading issue will go away when you mark that sharp. I select them like that. Boundary loop, mark sharp. Then it's not an issue, and again we mark them sharp. And mark the front sharp. Mark that sharp, and actually we would mark that sharp as well. So what you'd have to do then is start punching the holes through. So that's given me something to work with, and so if we go in here, let's take them and hide everything else. And that's the one we really want. So we can go in, and I'm just going to select that face, and I'm going to duplicate it, separate it by selection. Select that, 7. And again go into edit mode, and once again knife project. This time we don't need to cut through because we only want the top one done. So then you just basically select them and delete the faces. And then you would do the same everywhere else. So where you come out on height, actually we just select that. I'm just going to delete that now. Unhide everything. I'm going to select that and select that, and I'm going to join them. Go in. That's brought with it some loose geometry, so let's get rid of that. So 24 vertices. Now that, if I GG8, you can see that's not connected. So you're going to merge here best you can. And again, that would be well, you can just mark sharp by just selecting it. There we go. There we go. So there's that. And you would literally repeat that process for everything else. So it's very long-winded if you want to do something like that. So just be aware when you set to it of the overhead involved in handling something like that. It's far simpler to just have it like this. Just makes much more sense, sort of time-wise, for want of a better phrase, because you don't really lose that much by not having a bevel round there. most of the detail is there. So again, consider things like that when you're doing repairing geometry and that. It's only things like this sharp edge and that sharp edge that tend to leap out at you, and no doubt it'll be the same on the bottom. Select those two and mark them sharp. And you see that's the only thing that tends to matter. The rest, it's the lack of it is negligible. I mean, you can mark that sharp if you want. You know, you're looking for areas where you think it's going to make a difference. And so that's that, really. And then the last thing that we're going to show is this, which again, it's going to be very similar procedure, dealing with faces that have been filled in where they shouldn't be exactly the same procedure. I won't be hand-held in as much as that. I'll be going through the process more, and you can then watch what I'm doing and see if you can see where I'm going to go next, which will give you an indication of whether you have absorbed anything from what I've been saying, because it'll start to become, oh, anticipating what I'm about to do next. Okay, home stretch, guys. I appreciate this has been a long video, but as with me, Substance Paint One, I'm trying to make this as inclusive as possible, so you get to see everything I'm doing. Now again, as I say, I'm going to be a little quicker on this, and I was going to go through the same thing, but I've decided I'm going to show you a possible alternative. Well, the first thing is, we know this is a mirrored thing, so I'm just going to hide that. Let's start the display again. That we want to hide because that's part and parcel of it. These again are these spurious edge polygons, and that's part of the mirror as well, so that can go. Right, so first things first, let's tackle this. Well, we might as well just join these two, so we're only dealing with that, and I'll call it frame part. Why not? So let's go in. What have we got? We've got these ugly polygons. So that one, I'm going to separate that. Then I'm just going to flick into local mode. Well, that's an ugly polygon. I'm just going to delete that face. Then we've got this polygon as well, which is almost what we want. So I'm going to separate that by selection as well. Now, again, going to double flick to come refresh my local mode. So what have we got? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select these polygons here. Sorry, not polygons at all, Colin, they're edges. Going to select these edges here, like that. And what am I going to do? I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to separate them by selection. Come out of thing. Then I'm actually going to hide that. I'm going to go into wireframe, and I'm going to actually go here and draw all edges using the Alt key to make sure that everything's shown. So I'm going to select that, and I've missed an edge out there, so I'm just going to select them two and do F and delete that point because I didn't want that edge selected. I accidentally selected it. Right. Let's hide everything, and then again I've missed an edge out there, so F there. I think you can see where this is going, and just like that, and F there. Right, so we've got that, and we've got this, and we've got that. So looking at that, I'm going to call that poly full. And bear in mind a lot of this, I'm going to call that poly part. And I'm going to unhide that like that. Then what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to select these two, do F, sorry, for face. Select these, do F for face. Separate that by selection. Separate that by selection. I did them separately deliberately, and I needn't have done all of that actually. I can actually delete that. I could have just selected the edges and selected those things. So let's unhide everything, and again, just it's an easy way of doing it. So I'm going to select these two. I'm going to call that front cut. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to call that back cut. Like that. So I'm going to select those two, and I'm just going to move them slightly on the x-axis. Well, slightly, it can be any distance really. So now I'm going to select that, and actually I'm going to select that and select that. So that's the poly part and the poly front. And going into edit mode, do that, and we're just going to do a knife project. Like that. Then select that poly and delete the face. Come out. So I'm gonna. That's the poly full, and we want both of these. Hide everything else. So select them first, then that. Edit mode 3. Knife project. Select them. Delete the faces. Out of edit mode, unhide everything, and now we can kill the cut bits. We don't need them, and so I'm just going to move that out. So you can see we've basically got two versions of the same thing using one of the odd polygons you initially had. So you can take any one of these and we can just snap to there, select that, Control J, go in, select everything, WR, and there you go. That's filled that in, as opposed to going in and selecting edges and manually filling it. Now obviously that literally was twice as long because I was showing you both. You could have just chosen either one of them and it could have been done quicker. And in fact, I'm going to do that now. If I revert back to what it was, I'm going to select that, and I'm just going to join them. And I'm going to control the invert thing and delete everything. And I go in, select my faces, and that's all I want. So I'm going to separate that by selection. Then I can delete those faces. Right, then I'll go into local view so I can see which edges I want. I want that edge and that edge. And in fact, if we select all of these edges, oops, didn't want that one, wanted that one, like this, we can make a face. And there's only actually two edges on this, so we can just select those two and make a face. Take that poly and that trolley and you separate that by selection and come out, move that on the x-axis, alright, so select that, and then go into edit mode 3, go down, knife project, select that poly and that poly, delete the faces, come out, delete that, select that and that, Control J, go in, select everything, WR, boom, job done. Select them, flip the normals. And I've not turned the display on again, but never mind. By now you should be pretty clear what I'm up to. Delete the faces. Right, now I want to set my, I know this is mirrored, so I'm going to select the two exterior points which form the center. E on the X, snap to the furthest distance, and set my origin to that. Go straight back in and delete those two vertices. Right, now we do actually have some loose points here, but we want them. So select those four and press F to make a face. Edge mode. Going to select, in fact we want to get rid of a face there as well, so let's delete that face. Take the edges, select that and that. F for face, select that and that. F for face, FF, FF. That's that done. Come in here, Alt click, Shift Alt click, W, bridge edge loops. Alt click, Shift F click, W, bridge edge loops. Click, click, F, click, click, Control X. That's that. Add my modifier, add my mirror, clip in X and Y, and there's your frame. And that was that quick. And that's just another way of utilizing it. Look for any polys that just happen to cover the area you want. So is it going to be quicker to join these faces up, or is it going to be quicker to take a poly and slice through it? So that's something to consider. And I'll just use hard ops and throw a bevel on here. Set the bevel width down to about 4. Like that. And that looks super pretty. And then if we take that in concept with everything else we've done, so select everything, and I'm just going to make sure we're not in wire, so you can see how it looks. Right, the only thing I haven't tackled now actually would be the wheel nuts. And again, if we select that, I'm going to hide everything. We can go to the wheel nuts. And let's say you wanted these to have a UV map. You can just take one of each. You know. So you could sort of take one, go into edit mode, and what I would do is simply mark everything as a seam, and select that and clear the seam on that. And what that gives you is a nice thing there. So we can hide that. And we can join those three, go in, mark everything as a seam, clear the seam, unwrap, go out, hide everything, do something similar on the back, same thing, join, mark seam. I've got shortcuts here, but basically I'm going there, mark seam, selecting these three faces, clearing the seam, unwrap, hide. Then I can select the rest of them, and I'll actually stick them onto a different layer. And that way I know I'm getting it right. Then unhide everything. Right, now what we're going to do, I'm going to select the wheel. I'm going to set the cursor to the wheel, like that. Then we come in So let's tackle that one first. Set origin to cursor. Go into edit mode. I'm going to do Shift Alt O so I can see that one. Select it. Make sure my pivot point is my cursor. I'm going to Shift D R 15. Then Shift R and just keep repeating. Like that. So that's that one done. Hide that, select that. This is more straightforward. Again, set the cursor, get the origin to the 3D cursor. Go in, make sure everything's selected. Shift DR 90. Repeat, repeat. Compare that to that one. It's close enough for rock and roll. Do the same on the other side. Origin to 3D cursor. So Control 3. Shift DR 90. And there we go. And that's a fast way of doing the bolts. Again, maximize the use of it. You could have also done it with an array. Used an array with an empty and set the rotate. So if we take another one of these points, say, I'm just going to move that to a layer all of its own, and I'm going to go in again, do the same thing. There we go. I'm going to leave the origin as it is. Actually, I'm going to add an empty. Like that. Sorry, I do want to set the origin to the 3D cursor. Add an empty. Got that, so go in, add an array. Let's set the object offset to the empty. Turn that off. Rotate that on the X by 15 degrees. And you can see where we're going with this. And then that, you just ramp up like that. And then if you to set that to a full object, you can just apply it and then delete your empty. And that would be another way of doing those bolts. Now if I just step back that a few times, the beauty of this is if I wanted to, I could move that around. So, not that you want to in this instance, but anywho, that's just another thing, another way of dealing with it. But there you have it anyway. There's the whole process. Any questions, as usual, feel free to leave them in the comments or find me on the Blender booth. Find me on Facebook on Blender for Beginners. I hope some of this has been of use and helps some people sort issues out. Again, apologies for the long-windedness, but you know, I'd rather be complete than cut corners. And see you next time.